Hello everybody. Once again on behalf of Game Tutorial, I welcome you to this episode of my series of tutorial videos. Today's video is about consumers equilibrium through indifference curve. We have studied equi-marginal utility and law of equi-marginal utility as was derived by Marshall to reach at consumers equilibrium. And today in this video we will be learning how consumers equilibrium can be reached through indifference curve analysis. Now by consumers equilibrium we mean the consumer is maximizing his satisfaction by allocating his money income between two commodities. Okay, now indifference curve is the locus of all the combinations of two commodities, each of which gives the consumer same level of satisfaction. And what is budget line or price line or price opportunity line is the locus of all the combination of two commodities which are equally expensive to the consumer. So indifference curve is drawn from the perspective of satisfaction and budget line is drawn from the perspective of expenditure. In indifference curve, the consumer is indifferent among all the points on an indifference curve as regards his satisfaction, and on budget line, the consumer is indifferent among all the points on the budget line as regards his money expenditure. Okay, now in order to establish consumers equilibrium or to see where the consumer maximizes his satisfaction, these two things, that is indifference curve and budget line, must be incorporated in one single diagram. Let us see. Consumers equilibrium through indifference curve. Okay, now this is indifference curve. This is quantity of x, and here quantity of y. The consumer is indifferent among all these points, and here you draw a budget line. Here the consumer is also indifferent among all these points as regards his total money expenditure. That means the total money at disposal of the consumer is spent among two commodities X and Y, and all these points are equally expensive, and the consumer is spending all the money on only two goods X and Y. Right. Now in order to establish consumers equilibrium, we have to incorporate these two things in one diagram. I am erasing this one. This is indifference curve and this is budget line. Now I am going to incorporate these two diagrams in a single diagram to show how the consumer reaches equilibrium point. That means where the consumer derives maximum satisfaction. Sorry. Now, before we start learning consumers equilibrium through indifference curve analysis, we have to make certain assumptions. What are the assumptions? The consumer acts rationally. The consumer has a given level of income. Sorry. Prices of the commodities are given, and the consumer spends all his money on two commodities only. So these are the assumptions on which consumer's equilibrium through indifference curve is established. Now watch very carefully what I am drawing. This is quantity of X and this is quantity of Y. We also know what is indifference map. Indifference map shows the scale of preferences of the consumer. Say this is IC1, this is IC2, this is IC3. There are other indifference curves as well. Suppose this is the price line of the consumer. This is A, this is B. You see, the consumer, as the consumer moves along the indifference map, he goes on from lower indifference curve to higher indifference curve, and this is budget line. Any indifference curve beyond this budget line is not reachable by the consumer. That means, although the consumer gets greater satisfaction in IC3, IC4, successively greater satisfaction, IC6 and so on, but the consumer cannot avail any commodities on these indifference curves because his money income is constrained by the line AB. He cannot go beyond line AB. Now you see, the AB, that is the price line, is tangent to IC2 at this point. IC2 is tangent to the price line AB at this point, say S. So S is a point on the budget line AB as well as on the indifference curve IC2. That means the consumer is in equilibrium because he is getting maximum satisfaction by allocating his money income between two commodities. Okay, so this is the point of equilibrium. Now let us look at another diagram. This is A, this is B. This is quantity of X on X-axis and quantity of Y on Y-axis. This is the point of tangency between IC2 and AB. This is IC1. This is IC3. Now you see, the budget line AB intersects IC1 at 2 points, here and here. Say this is point R, this is point T, and this is point V. So the consumer is indifferent among T, R and V as long as his satisfaction is concerned. Sorry, I beg your pardon. As long as his budget is concerned, because T, R and V lie on the same budget line AB. But you see, point R and point T cannot give the consumer same level of satisfaction. In the same way, point R and point V cannot give the consumer same level of satisfaction. Why? Because point R lies on higher indifference curve IC2 than point T and point V, which lie on lower indifference curve IC1. Okay, and IC3 is beyond his reach because IC3 lies above the budget line. So this is the equilibrium position of the consumer. That means the consumer derives maximum satisfaction by remaining at point R. At there he is spending all his money on two commodities X and Y, and he is consuming, say, X1 of X and Y1 of Y. So X1 of X and Y1 of Y is that combination which gives the consumer highest level of satisfaction. Okay, so the conditions of equilibrium are number one, IC, that is indifference curve, must be tangent to the budget line. IC must be tangent to the budget line. Here IC is tangent to the budget line. And number two, at the point of tangency, the curve, that is the indifference curve, IC must be convex to the origin. Now this part is okay. IC must be tangent to the budget line. This we have already established. Now come to point 2. What is that? At the point of tangency, the IC must be convex to the origin. That means at the point of tangency, IC cannot be concave to the origin. Okay. Now let us see what will happen if the budget line is tangent to an indifference curve which is concave. Now I am erasing so far. Consider an indifference map consisting of many concave indifference curves. This is IC1, this is IC2, and this is IC3. This is quantity of X on X-axis and quantity of Y on Y-axis. Okay, and this is the budget line. This is the point of tangency between IC1 and budget line, say AB. So AB is the budget line that is tangent to IC1 at point, say, S. Now, according to the first condition, that the budget line must be tangent to the indifference curve, is satisfied at this point, because at this point IC1, that indifference curve, is tangent to the budget line. But watch very carefully. Consider these 2 points, say M and N. You see, S, M and N all lie on the same budget line AB. But M and N lie on successively higher indifference curves. That means M lies on IC2, which is higher than IC1. N lies on IC3, which is higher than IC2. So long as satisfaction is concerned, the consumer cannot be indifferent between S, M and N, because M certainly gives the consumer more satisfaction than S, because M is on higher indifference curve. In the same way, point N and point M cannot give the consumer same satisfaction. Rather, N will give the consumer higher level of satisfaction, because the N lies on higher indifference curve IC3. So here what we see, actually here the consumer is getting least satisfaction, minimum satisfaction, when we consider this indifference map consisting of three indifference curves. If the indifference curve is concave to the origin, then the point of tangency indicates the consumer is getting minimum satisfaction. Hence, indifference curve cannot be concave to the origin, and so consumer's equilibrium cannot be established on a concave indifference curve. Now, see, look very carefully on this diagram. Suppose this is the indifference curve. Okay. Suppose this is the budget line. Sorry. This is the budget line. So according to the first condition, say P, not P, take it as U. So according to the first condition, the consumer should be at equilibrium on this point. That means the consumer should get maximum satisfaction at point U. But you see, by remaining on the same budget line, the consumer can move to a higher indifference curve. We can draw a higher indifference curve. This is IC1, this is IC2. We can draw a higher indifference curve on the same budget line AB. Isn't it? IC2 is a higher indifference curve compared to IC1. So this point must be giving the consumer greater satisfaction than this point. Okay. So once again it is established that the consumer cannot be at equilibrium on a concave indifference curve. To be at equilibrium, the indifference curve must be convex to the origin, and at the point of tangency, it must be convex to the origin. Okay. Now, I am erasing these two diagrams to proceed further. Okay. Here we have drawn concave indifference curve, and we have shown that the point of tangency between the indifference curve and the budget line actually gives the consumer least satisfaction, that is the minimum satisfaction. On the other hand, in case of convex indifference map or convex indifference curves, the point of tangency gives the consumer maximum level of satisfaction. So at point of tangency, the indifference curve must be convex to the origin. Now I am erasing this part. Now, what a point of tangency mathematically implies? When a curve and a straight line has a common point, that means there is a point of tangency. At the point of tangency, the slope of the straight line and the slope of the curve become equal. That is called point of tangency mathematically. So, again I am drawing one diagram. Please watch carefully. AB is the budget line, this is quantity of X, this is quantity of Y, and this is indifference curve. This is the point of tangency, right? So the consumer is deriving maximum satisfaction at point say M by consuming OX1 units of X and OY units of Y. At this point, indifference curve is tangent to the budget line AB. Now, what is the slope of the budget line? Slope of budget line is equal to what? Is equal to the price ratios, isn't it? That is Px by Py. Why so? Because the slope of this line is tan of this angle. Tan of angle B is equal to OA by OB. OA is the perpendicular and OB is the base. And what is OB? OB is M by Px. If M is total money income, then OB is equal to M by Px, and OA equals to M by Py. So tan of this angle is equal to M by Py divided by M by Px, which is equal to Px by Py. The slope of the budget line is the price ratio, Px by Py. Now, what is the slope of indifference curve at this point? We have learned marginal rate of substitution, MRS, which is equal to delta Y by delta X. MRS, that is marginal rate of substitution of X for Y, is delta Y by delta X. So at this point, MRS is equal to delta Y by delta X. And at this point, slope of the budget line is Px by Py. So if at the point of tangency, slope of BL is equal to slope of budget line is equal to slope of the indifference curve. Okay. So what we get? We get Px by Py is equal to MRS XY. That is, the ratio of the prices is equal to marginal rate of substitution of X for Y. Now remember Marshallian utility theory. In Marshallian theory, we have learned that Px by Py I am erasing this part. In Marshallian theory, that is law of equi-marginal utility, we have learned that MUX by MUY is equal to Px by Py. Okay. So ultimately what we get? Px by Py equals to MRS XY. On the other hand, Px by Py is equal to MUX by MUY. So ultimately what we get? We get MRS XY is equal to marginal utility of X by marginal utility of Y is equal to Px by Py. Okay. Now, this is done by Marshall and this is done by Hicks and Allen. Due to certain limitations of law of equimarginal utility, and one of the important limitation is that utility cannot be quantitatively measured. That is, utility is not cardinally measurable. Hicks and Allen ultimately invented indifference curve technique to analyze and establish consumers' behavior and consumers' equilibrium. But ultimately we see that what Marshall said is exactly equal to what Hicks and Allen said. That is, mux by muy is equal to a minus xy, that is equal to px by py. So Marshallian law of equimarginal utility is fundamental or basic in understanding consumers' behavior and consumers' equilibrium, and also the theory of demand. Hicks and Allen also dependent on Marshall's logic. What was Marshall's logic? That marginal utility of x by marginal utility of y will be exactly equal to the ratio of their prices. Okay? So this is indifference curve technique applied to establish consumers' equilibrium. That means the point on indifference curve where the consumer derives maximum satisfaction by allocating his money income between two commodities. We have learned that consumers' equilibrium is established at the point of tangency between the indifference curve and the budget line, and at the point of tangency IC must be convex to the origin. It cannot be concave to the origin, and it is assumed that the consumer acts rationally. The consumer has a given level of money income, that is budget line, and the prices of x and y are given, and finally the two commodities are substituted to one another. Okay, so I believe you have understood how consumers' equilibrium is reached through indifference curve technique. Enough for today. We shall call it a day. Before that, I have few words. I believe you have enjoyed this video. If you carefully watch this video, you carefully watch what I am drawing on this board, what diagrams, what calculations, and so on and so forth. Economics will be fun for you. You will have a very good command over the subject, as well as you can do very well in your exams. At the same time, I will appreciate your comments through the comment box, because your comments and your suggestions are very valuable for us. Those will enable us to provide better videos and better online classes. Okay, so please be comfortable to send comments through the comment box. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you for watching this video. Goodbye.